Hello, and welcome to Joline Knits A Lot. This is my show about knitting and crochet and other forms of knitting. Welcome. How have you been? My name's Joline, in case the title of my show wasn't clear enough. And I can't believe it's the end of March. It's been such a long year, hasn't it? And it's hard for me to wrap my head around spring again. But here we are. I guess preparing for another wave of COVID while we struggle to get enough vaccines in people's arms. I'm very much looking forward to the day when I can get a vaccine and my family can get vaccines, and every member of my family who gets a vaccine is a big win for me. So in the last few weeks I've been excitedly ticking off the family members who've been getting vaccines. So it's very exciting, and I hope that if it's right for you, that you will consider getting a vaccine, because it means a lot, not just for yourself, for the people around you. So please vaccinate. I remember as a child, I had a lot of storybooks. My parents were both teachers. My mom was a special ed teacher in elementary school. So we read a lot of books as children. And I remember at home having a book about Louis Pasteur. And it was a picture book. And it was all about how he invented the first vaccines. It's funny how I can picture that book in my head when we talk about vaccines. And it's so exciting to me that we have an opportunity to use a vaccine to keep so many people safe, and to reduce the harm to so many people. So please consider getting vaccinated. And if you have done, well done. I am so proud of you. Just listen to Dolly Parton. Like she says, she's old enough and she's smart enough, so she got a vaccine. And not only did she get that vaccine in her arm, she paid for it. I love that woman. I love that woman. When I was a child, I was given, again, more childhood stories. I was given a record of Dolly Parton's album that had the song Joline on it. And I listened to it a lot. I loved it when I was a kid, but then as I grew older and people continued to sing that song to me, it became a little bit of an irritant. But after some time, and the renewal of that song, it's becoming more popular again. I've learned to love it again. So Dolly Parton and I have had a rocky relationship, but I'm happy to say we're on good terms now. How are you and Dolly Parton doing? How are you doing in general? I hope that you have found some time in the last few weeks to turn your attention to things that make you happy on the inside, that fill your cup up, that help you feel satisfied and fulfilled in some way. I've been knitting. This should come as no surprise. So I think the last time we talked, I was working on some little sneaker socks, and I have completed them. These are the Chuck socks, and I got out my massive wooden sock blockers to show you these socks on. As you can see, they're just little short socks that fit nicely inside of some sneakers. The thing I like about this pair of socks is that it's very low here on the foot, so it won't show above sneakers, and that I know is important to my teenage daughters. But I like that too. So while I have knit these socks and I would like to test drive them more, it hasn't really been quite sneaker weather around here. We've had a lot of snow that's been melting, and sort of in the spring we have a lot of wet weather, obviously, big puddles, slushy weather. So I'm just holding off until it's really sneaker weather to give these a try. But these are my Chuck socks. I used mustache yarns, and I used the leftovers of Lando colorway, left over from a pair of socks I made my husband. So this is one, this is the other, and I'm quite happy with them. But again, I haven't really had a chance to test drive them, but I'm hoping to do that soon. What else have I been working on? I also completed a crochet project. I don't think you've seen this one. I was craving something different to work on. And I don't know, I was feeling like crochet. So I got out a couple balls of Knit Picks yarn that I had. It's cotton. I had two different balls that were in a similar colorway, so I blended them in this project, and I think it's okay. Don't tell the crochet police. I used one ball of Dishy, which is great value. It's great dishcloth yarn, but it's great for like crafting things, and I like it for things like bags or dishcloths or what have you. The other ball was Simply Cotton worsted cotton yarn, and they were in similar colorways, and so I put them together in this bag. It's called the Weekend Wanderer bag, and I encourage you to check out this. Let's hold it up so you can see. This is really difficult. I'm going to show you an actual picture up here. So this is a very beginner-friendly crochet project because I would consider myself a beginner crocheter. I don't have a lot of crochet skills, but this project isn't crocheted as a long rectangle. It's what's called a bento shape, so it's folded up. It's a free pattern, so I would totally encourage you to go check it out. So you knit a rectangle and you fold one corner up and you fold the other corner down, and then you fold it along. There's way better pictures in the pattern. You fold it along the middle and you get this shape, and then you do one seam. There's one seam here, right down this sort of diagonal. Well, this is very difficult to show. There's one seam here, and then there's one seam in the exact same spot on the other side, and then you stitch the two ends of the rectangle together at the top for a handle. I'm actually quite pleased at how I managed to stitch this two ends together. I just kind of whip stitched all the way around here, and it turned out into kind of a nice diamond. That was kind of accidental, but I'm quite happy with it. And then once I'd finished this bag, the bottom corners of it were really sticking out. And in the pattern, the designer recommended that you box the bottom, which means you take the little corners of the rectangle at the bottom and you just sew them across. Again, excellent instructions in the pattern. And that gives you this nice shape so that when you're wearing it over your shoulder, it sits nicely. It gives you some nice depth across the bottom, and you can access it here quite widely. So I think this would be a great market bag. It would be great for going to the beach in the summer if I lived anywhere near a beach. Yeah, for the market for sure, for carrying books, for, you know, going to soccer practices and games and putting all my knitting projects in. So this is the Weekend Wanderer bag. It's a great beginner friendly crochet pattern. I used pretty much 200 grams of the cotton that I was using. So I used Dishy and Simply Organic Cotton worsted, and I used all of what I had. And I'm really quite happy with how it turned out. I think it's a great bag. I could see myself maybe making them as gifts. It's crochet, which actually goes pretty quickly. I knitted up in I crocheted it up in a few days. And I wasn't working on it solely. So yeah, I would recommend that, especially for those of us who are somewhat new to crochet. And that is all my hand-knit finished objects for this week. I have some other things I want to show you, but first I just remembered that I didn't tell you anything about what I'm wearing today. Here, let's have a better look at it. Ooh, this is the Courage shawl. It's a shawl, I believe, by Shannon Cook. It came out several years ago. Here, let me give you a better look at it. Ta-da! Hey there. This is a worsted weight shawl, so it's actually quite bulky, but I find that if I kind of tuck in the ends like this and just sort of adjust it, it's a really cozy shawl to wear. I like wearing it in the winter, like when I'm inside because it's very cozy, but it's also great in the spring and the fall with like a denim jacket to keep your neck warm. So I would recommend this pattern if you're in the market for a worsted weight. It uses mosaic stitches, so if you're a little bit scared of doing color work, this is a really great way to sort of get into that realm without having to commit to knitting with 2 hands. I used 3 different kinds of yarn. I used Brooklyn Tweed Shelter, that's the white. The gray is a yarn that it comes from a mill in Alberta. It's called Custom Woolery Mills, and this is like a woolen spun worsted weight yarn. It is great value if you're looking for some beautiful, soft, lofty worsted weight yarn. It really, really knits well with the Brooklyn Tweed Shelter, and I had to actually look up in my pattern notes to see which one was the Shelter and which one was the Custom Woolen Mills yarn, which I think speaks to what a lovely yarn it is. I sometimes have issues knitting with Brooklyn Tweed yarn because I find it quite fragile. It can pull apart really easily, and I don't find the same true with the Custom Woolen Mills yarn. While I can break it with my hands when I'm ready to switch colors or stop using it, it doesn't fall apart on me while I'm knitting. And I've had that happen with Brooklyn Tweed Shelter on more than one occasion, especially if I'm doing something like cables, when I'm trying to pull the yarn quite tight. I find that it doesn't hold up to the tension that I'm pulling on it, whereas the Custom Woolen Mills yarn will. The dark blue yarn is a yarn that I had picked up. It was again a fundraiser yarn. I'm all about the fundraiser yarn. It's Dream State, which is the worsted weight yarn by Spin Cycle. They had this yarn on sale. They were doing a fundraiser for, I believe, I can't remember what it was. I'm not going to say. But they had a bunch of the yarn and they were selling it and using the profits to donate to a cause that I think was in Kenya. It might have been like malaria relief, something like that. Anyway, I had picked up 2 skeins and I didn't know what I was going to do with it, and then this shawl pattern came out and I was quite happy to pull it together. I love the colors I chose, like a deep navy with gray and white. It's very classic, and it's also very like neutral, so I can wear it with a lot of things, and it's quite cozy. So the Courage shawl. If you ever have questions about the things I'm wearing on the podcast or the projects I'm working on, I do keep track of everything on my Ravelry homepage, my project page, and I'm on Ravelry. I'm Joline, just like in the title of my show. So if you are ever curious about what I used, please feel free to have a look at my Ravelry project page, or even message me. I don't mind chatting about my things. Who does? So that's what I'm wearing. Now, I have 2 other finished objects to show you. One of them I didn't make. Actually, well, yeah, one of them I didn't make, and the other one I used a very new to me technique. So first I'm going to show you the project that I didn't make. My eldest daughter, unfortunately, was a close contact of a COVID positive case at school. So she had to stay home and quarantine for 2 weeks. That was really hard on her. She's a social creature and she wanted to be with her friends. So it was hard for her to be home. And she's known how to knit for a long time, but she asked me if she could do some knitting while she was home. So she made a couple dishcloths, and then she made just a plain stockinette stitch hat, which actually ended up kind of big. You know, when you're learning, gauge is an issue. But then she wanted to learn how to purl, and I found a free pattern. It's put out by Espace Tricot. It's called Pull the Wool Over, and that pattern uses 2 yarns held together to get sort of a chunky weight yarn. And so I told her to just have a look in my stash and see what she could find that she wanted to use. So she came out with a ball of Woolfolk Luft. my eldest daughter has always had high-end tastes. Anyway, so she picked a beautiful skein of yarn, and you know what? It was left over from a project, and I didn't have it tagged for anything, so I said, sure, let's cast on. So I cast on the number of stitches. I taught her, I did one round showing her how to knit and to purl, and she made a hat. Check it out. Okay, now look at that ribbing. For someone who has never really knit purls before, for someone who has never purled before, that's really, really good ribbing. It's a knit 4, purl 4 rib. And again, it's a free pattern. You can check it out online if you like. And she used pretty much a whole ball of the luft in this beautiful burgundy colorway. And she even did the decreases. She hates using DPNs, fun fact, but she did it so she could finish the hat. And have a look at that. Like, it's amazing to me that this was one of her first projects and her first purled project. And then she didn't want it, so she gave it to me. So I get a new hat. Isn't that fabulous? It's a little slouchy. It's super cozy because it's loft. Hello. So thank you, Quarantine. And thank you, Ava, for knitting me this amazing hat. Pull the wool over hat, great pattern, very beginner friendly. Apparently it's a good project if you're just learning how to purl. Yeah, really happy with it. I'm very proud of my daughter. So that's that. Now the last finished object I have for you is a pair of socks. This pair of socks is the very first tube cranked on my circular sock machine. Now let me tell you, in the last couple of weeks I have been spending a lot of time, a lot of frustration with my circular sock machine. I've been learning how to use it, so that was, a work in progress. And I've been having issues with figuring out gauge. I know how the machine is supposed to work. Oh, my hair is just all weird today. I know how it's supposed to work. I know the theory, but it's a 3D printed plastic circular sock machine. So it's finicky. Working on trying to get the gauge as small as possible. As small as possible? I am trying to get as many stitches per inch as I can. It's a work in progress, let me tell you. My husband has been incredibly supportive and helpful, and we've had some issues with things I've printed. I printed a cylinder initially that was for 64 stitches, which I had to play with the code to get 64 slots on this cylinder. And I do not know anything about coding, but it turns out if you just play around long enough with the numbers, you can get it to work. Don't ask me how I did it. But the slots on that machine were in that cylinder were a little bit too wide, and I found that the needles, which are, they look like a latch hook needle with a little L at the bottom. The slots were too wide, and the needles, instead of sitting nicely in the slots, would occasionally pivot like this, and then they wouldn't work and I'd have problems. So I've had a lot of frustration with my circular sock machine, but I have managed some successes. So I cranked out a tube of socks for possibly myself. Again, the gauge is a little bit bigger. I would like to have more stitches per inch. So this isn't ideal. And I thought while I had you here, I would check the gauge on this and my chuck socks. So here's my chuck socks. These are hand knit. I knit them on 2.5 millimeter needles. So that's, a pretty tight gauge. And I know that I knit my socks to a pretty tight gauge. So let me just see what I got here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 8.5. 8.5 stitches per inch. That's what I hand knit socks too. So this tube that I crafted, created, cranked, all of the above, when I have it on my stitch blocker, I get, or sock blocker, I get, let me see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 7¼ 7½. So that's 1 whole stitch per inch that I'm more that I can get when I'm hand knitting. I'm just going to check it when it's not stretched on the blocker and see if that's different. Isn't gauge an amazing thing? Okay, let's see. What do I got? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Yeah. So these, it turns out that these socks, the ones that I have cranked, are a little bit big on my foot, slightly loose. Again, that's a work in progress. I'm just going to count my gauge on this one again. I would have thought that the difference would be greater than that. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8½ I am surprised. Flabbergasted even. Let's just zoom in. Okay, ooh. Have a look at that gauge. That's my hand knitting. And have a look at this gauge. This is cranked on my circular sock machine. Now again, this has been a work in progress. Fiddly, slightly frustrating at times. My biggest issue is finding the right adjustment for the stitches and finding the right amount of weight to put on the tube to get a functioning fabric without dropping stitches. I won't bore you with all the details, but suffice it to say, I was really quite proud of myself when I got a tube that I could actually turn into a pair of socks, and so I did it. Ta-da! This is the I Smell Snow colorway. It is made by Nomadic Fibers, and she does great self-striping yarns. If you're ever looking for self-striping yarn, I suggest you check her out. And really, I'm quite pleased with these. They are a little bit big, and I think probably part of the issue is that I did an afterthought heel, and the afterthought heel is a little bit too far back. Had it been a little bit closer to the toe, I think I'd be happier with the fit. But that's not the only new thing I did on these socks. I also tried a new type of heel. Sorry, I'm just going to put this sock back on the blocker to show you. Now, I have a high instep. Everybody's feet are different sizes, and so the nice thing about hand knitting socks or making your own socks is that you can make adjustments to the sock so that it fits your foot better. So I have been doing a little bit of research on the old internet. What did we do before the internet? How did we learn anything? Books? Card catalogs? The Dewey Decimal System? Pfft, whatever. The internet's way faster. Anyway, so what I did was I found an afterthought heel, like a true afterthought heel that you cut into your sock, that has a little bit of extra room for the arch of your foot. So let me show you what this heel looks like. I'm gonna go over here. So have a look at this. I'm just gonna go ahead and use my zoom function, which means I'm gonna sit forward and hold this right in front of you. I used short rows, and this wasn't my idea. I found this article on the internet, on someone's blog, where they were talking about the use of a few short rows at the corner of each heel that you do before you start the decreases on an afterthought heel. This is brilliant. Again, this article is free. You can look this up. Let me tell you what I did. I will use the other sock also for demonstration. So when you're doing an afterthought heel, you pick up, whether you're hand knitting your socks or machine cranking, the process is the same. So you pick up a bunch of stitches half the stitches, in fact, along the tube. So you pick up half the stitches here, and then you leave a row of knitting, and then you pick up half the stitches here. Then you cut one stitch in the middle of that in between row of knitting and pull that out. So now you've got live stitches here and live stitches here. And that is demonstrated by this bit of knitting here is one row of the live knitting, and this row here is the other row of the live knitting. So basically you've got half your knitting, half your tube ready to be knit. And that's true for almost every afterthought heel. So what you do is you knit to the end of your first needle, or your top of your sock, or the bottom of your sock, however you're looking at it, knit to the end, and then you turn the corner, and in my experience, or what I did was I knit 3, and then I turned my work and I did a double stitch. A double stitch is used in German short rows, which means when you're knitting, you turn your work. Now you've got your purl side facing you. You take the yarn and you pull it to the back so that one stitch looks like it has 2 strands. That's called a double stitch. So pull it to the back, then I purled back to the middle, knit 3, purled 3, purled 3, turned my work, did a double stitch. So basically I was doing short rows. You can use whatever technique of short rows you like, but I have found I really like German short rows. I find them less visible than a lot of other short row techniques, and less fiddly too. So anyway, you knit 3 past the halfway point, turn, work back to the corner, work 3 on this side, turn, and then you do work to that double stitch or your turning point, process that double stitch or turning stitch, wrapped stitch, however you work your short rows. In the case of a double stitch, you just simply knit those 2 strands together or purl them, depending on which side you're on, and that's all you have to do. And then you work 2 more stitches, turn it, and keep doing that back and forth until you have worked 4 sets of short rows. So back and forth 4 times, and then you knit to the other corner and you do the same thing. And what you're left with is this little bit of extra fabric right here. Can you see that? I think you can see where my decreases start here and how I've worked these little short rows so that I get a little bit of extra fabric here on this side and also on this side, and that is enough to give the arch of my foot right here a little extra room. This is brilliant. I'm going to try this again on my next pair of socks. I encourage you to try it too. I'm going to try and put a link to this technique, or to the article that I found, in the show notes below so that you can investigate this if it's something that you're interested in. I know for myself personally, with a high instep, this is a great option for knitting a afterthought heel, but not adding a lot of, not adding too much space, but just space where I need it in that arch. So that was really interesting, and my very first pair of machine crank socks. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Quite proud of myself. And so because I was quite proud of myself, having completed this pair of socks, I of course cranked out more tubes. What would you do if you were me? The exact same thing, I'm sure. Again, gauge. What the heck? So let me show you the 2 tubes that I have cranked and removed from the machine. At the taping of this episode, there is another tube waiting to be cranked on my machine right now. I currently have an 80 stitch cylinder, which I've determined it was the first one I printed. It's too big. It's just too big for the gauge that I'm getting. So that one is currently just sitting aside, holding my yarn in it. It makes a great yarn bowl, so that's fun. On my machine currently, I have a 64 stitch cylinder. And again, I'm playing with that to get the gauge to where I want it. And now I'm in the process of deciding what size of cylinder I would like to print for a man size sock. I had thought I wanted a 76 stitch cylinder because that's the size I make for when I hand knit socks, but I'm quickly realizing that maybe that's not the best option, and I might actually print off a 72 stitch cylinder. But let's take a moment to admire my next two tubes. Here's another one that comes from Nomadic Fibers. Pretty sure it's Nomadic Fibers. This is the Neville Colorway, which is a colorway based on Harry Potter. And who doesn't love Neville? The green is his gillyweed, because it turns out he's really good at herbology. Go Neville. Anyway, so here's a short tube, and I should be able to crank this, I did crank it. I should be able to change this into a shorty pair of socks that would fit myself. So that's one tube. The other tube I have is the leftovers from my child socks. This again is from Nomadic Fibers because she does amazing work. The child, this is named after Baby Yoda, or Grogu if you're a big fan of The Mandalorian. This one's a pretty long tube actually, because I guess I just had that much more leftovers. In case you are wondering, the purple at the ends of these two tubes is waste yarn, and when you're using a circular sock machine, you're always using waste yarn when you're casting on and when you're binding off, to keep the stitches alive so that you can pick them up again. Let's check my gauge. I'm sorry if this is super boring to you. It's really interesting to me, and I apologize for those of you who are bored. Okay, so Neville, wow. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 7.25. Wow, that is consistent. Now let's check out the child. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7.5. So at least we can say that I'm consistent in my gauge. And it could be that that is just what this machine likes to knit to. Like, it could be that that's its preferred gauge. Again, it was a free file that I found on the internet for making my own circular sock machine, so I'm not going to fault the machine that much. I will say that it's offered me a lot of opportunities to learn about how these machines work, and what adjustments I would make if I were to make my own ideal circular sock machine. I don't know enough about it yet to know how I could improve the gauge, but I'm learning, and if I learn more, I will let you know. I have one more project on the needles. This episode is longer than I thought it would be. That project is my sweater, and my own personal design, and I showed it to you last time because I've been spending a lot of time tinkering with my circular sock machine. I haven't gotten as much finished as I thought I might, but let me show you what I've done. Last time I think I had just divided for the sleeves, and where I'm at right now is quite a ways down the body, and I'm almost maybe an inch or two away from doing the ribbing, and then I'll start on the sleeves. It's been my practice lately to knit to sort of just below the armpit, and then knit the sleeves, and then knit the rest of the body. The reason I didn't on this sweater is because I'm using helical knitting, and with helical knitting you're using 2 balls of yarn at the same time, knitting one round with one and one round with the other, and there was always a ball of yarn attached to my knitting, and so there was never really a good point to stop it. So I just thought, you know what, I'll just knit the body and then I'll do the sleeves after. So again, here it is. It's looking really good. I'm quite happy with it. I think that the helical knitting is making for quite a nice fabric. It is tonal, but I'm not getting much pooling, I don't think. I think it's going pretty well. So again, I'm just chugging away on that, working away. And really, if I could tear myself away from my circular sock machine to pay more attention to the pattern writing, I could get some progress on that too, but there's only so many hours in the day. I have some yarn that I'd like to show you for a new project that I'm planning, and then I have one special surprise for you if you've made it this far into the episode. So recently there was a pattern that came out. It's a pattern by Jessie May Designs for a tank top. You know, I'm a 45-year-old woman, and I want to knit myself a tank top. This tank top features drop stitches. It's called the Outline Tank, and I'll put a picture of the design right up here. It features drop stitches, so it's sassy. And if I find that I don't want to wear this in public, I'm sure it'll be great to wear underneath sweaters or as a layering piece. But there's so many knitters who've made this pattern and it looks fabulous on them, and I thought, you know what, I'm gonna give it a try. So I bought some yarn. This is a yarn by Kelborn Woolens. It's called Mojave. It is 60% cotton and 40% linen, so I think for a summer tank it'll be quite nice. I have 3 skeins that I'm gonna need to wind up soon in a really pretty kind of silvery lilac gray color that I think will be very nice. Who knows how this will turn out. It was sort of a whim, and I've really loved all of the finished projects that I've seen on Ravelry. So many different knitters with so many different body types and skin tones have knit this pattern, and it looks fabulous on everybody. So I thought, you know what? I'm everybody too, so why not give it a try? So the Outline Tank will be going on my needles, hopefully, maybe in the next week, if I can tear myself away from that circular sock machine. Who knows? So if you've made it this far into the podcast, that means that you're bored or you're a dedicated viewer. Either way, I'm happy that you're here, and maybe you'll be happy that you're here too. Because if you recall, a few weeks ago, I had tried to have a 100 subscriber giveaway. I drew a name, I contacted that person, and they have not contacted me back. It's been a month, and I would really like for somebody who watches this podcast to have something nice. I just want to give this away. And I want to give it away to somebody who is watching my show. Because I appreciate you. I appreciate the time that you spend with me. I appreciate the comments that you leave. I appreciate your likes and your support. And so I want to give you, lucky viewer, this prize. It's also not lost on me that in the last week I've achieved 200 subscribers. So this is now not my 100 subscriber giveaway. It is my 200 subscriber giveaway. And I want to give it to someone who watches this show. So if you are watching, and if you would like to have a skein of mustache yarn in their Woodstock 50 colorway with a complimentary skein of Sheepy's Metropolis in the Warsaw colorway. Spoiler alert, Warsaw is complimentary to everything. It goes with everything. So if you don't like this skein, this will go with whatever you have at home, I promise you. And if you have some left over, throw it into all your socks. It's great. I digress. If you're here, and I appreciate you if you are, and you would like to win this prize, leave a comment on this video and tell me, what should you tell me? Tell me what you're most looking forward to when COVID is all over and a distant memory. What are you looking forward to? I'm not sure what I'm most looking forward to. It might be a couple things. I'm looking forward to seeing all of my family in one place at one time and being able to hug people. And I'm looking forward to the ability to dream of going on trips and not worrying about getting sick or getting other people sick. So I guess I'm looking forward to my family, hugs, and seeing the world again. I miss you, world. I really do. So tell me in the comments below what the first thing that you want to do when COVID is a distant memory and you could be with a chance to win this prize. I will draw a name before I record my next podcast, which will be in 2 weeks' time. So it would be Friday, April 9th, I think. Whatever that Friday is. The second Friday in April, I will be recording another podcast. So that morning, I will be drawing a name and I will be announcing it on my next episode. So good luck. Thank you. Thank you for being here. Thank you for sharing your time with me. Thank you for commenting below. And thank you for helping me build a little community here. I hope that in the next couple weeks, you leave a comment below so you can win a prize. I also hope that you find time to do the things that you like to do. And I know I plan on tinkering with my circular sock machine. And when I'm not doing that, I plan on knitting a lot. Thank you. I'll see you soon. Take care. Bye-bye.